Welcome all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Gwen Bird, Dean of Libraries at Simon Fraser University, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to a wonderful evening to celebrate our newest non-fiction writer in residence, Chelene Knight. I'd like to get us started by inviting Elder Marie Hooper of the Coquitlam First Nation to offer an opening welcome. Elder Marie.
I raise my hands up to Creator ancestors, past and present, and to all of you that are here today. I'm honored to be here. My name is Marie Hooper, Elder, Knowledge Keeper, Storyteller, Ambassador for my nation, Coquitlam. I am an Indigenous trained guardian of the lands, trained in archaeology, in artifact recovery for Coquitlam. I am also in residence at the Indigenous Student Center, the ISC, at Burnaby SFU campus. I welcome you. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the Coast Salish peoples whose unceded ancestral traditional territories, homelands of the Coquitlam First Nation, where I am live here on Zoom with you all. I'd like to start this event off in a good way. We come together in celebration of virtual roundtable opening of Chelene Knight's term at SFU Library, non-fiction writer in residence with former writers Angela and Eternity, past and present writers, and the sharing of their personal thoughts into the art of writing, the joys of living their creative lives to the fullest. How can we choose a non-fictional book? So I looked this up. I found it very interesting. 7 essential factors to ensure a rewarding and enriching reading experience. Read reviews and recommendations. Use online reading platforms. Consider your skill level. Identify your interests. Set clear goals. Author interviews and talks. I'm looking forward into hearing from the 3 authors online today, the love of writing, and I also have the love of writing and have to learn how to put together a book about past and present here at Coquitlam. So I'm very, very interested in being here tonight. Chelene will be delivering workshops for SFU community on non-fictional writing for the public, offering opportunities for feedback on writing projects, showcase the power of non-fiction writing. Chelene is a writer, editor, teacher, and writing coach. And I am very pleased personally to have you, Chelene, join us up at SFU there, and I would love to meet you in person. I'd like to say a blessing at this time. Creator, Mother Earth, we gather here on Zoom, coming together in a respectful way. May we work together, network together on life's journey, share stories. Mother Earth gives us all we need to sustain life. We are thankful, humble, and kind. Honor all Indigenous people. Honor all peoples here in Canada and around the world. Always start a new day with a smile, with good intentions moving forward. First Nations people say Natsamot, meaning one heart, one mind. Haichka, thank you.
Haichka, Elder Marie, thank you so much for starting us off and offering that welcome and blessing. It's wonderful to have you here with us and to hear of your particular interest in this event as well. It's my privilege to welcome you all to this event to celebrate Chelene Knight, who's joining us as SFU Library's 2024 Nonfiction Writer in Residence. Chelene is, I'm just going to check. I see in the chat someone saying I can't hear anything. Is that the case for everyone? Are there people who can hear? I guess that's a better question. People.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Great. Thank you. Chelene will be joined tonight by two other extraordinary writers for what will be a casual and candid chat about the art of writing and the joy of living creative lives. And as we begin, I would like to thank our amazing event partner, SFU Public Square, for making this evening possible with us. I have a few Zoom housekeeping notes to share. First of all, note that the event is being recorded and the recording will be posted to the SFU Library and SFU Public Square websites after the event. Tonight's event will take place until approximately 6:45 p.m. And toward the end of the event, there will be an opportunity for the audience to ask questions of our speakers. Please use the Zoom Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to submit questions, and our speakers will get to as many of these as they can. If you're having issues hearing our speakers, you may not hear this message, but if you require any kind of assistance for audio, closed captioning, or other technological issues, feel free to message hosts and panelists, and one of our technical people will help you out. We do have community guidelines to guide our event this evening, and you'll see them shared in the chat now. Before I introduce our speakers, I just want to say a few words about our Nonfiction Writer in Residence program. Elder Marie got us started with this. Thank you. SFU Library established this program to celebrate and emphasize the power of nonfiction writing and storytelling among the university community. Over the past few years, the incredible writers who have held this residency have developed and strengthened the SFU community's ability to share their experiences, knowledge, and research beyond the university and traditional academic publishing to reach public audiences. That's what this writer in residency is all about. As the incoming nonfiction writer in residence, Chelene Knight will be facilitating a series of engaging workshops for the SFU community over the next semester on topics such as how to plan large-scale nonfiction projects, writing immersive personal narrative, and using lived experience as expertise. She's also offering one-on-one manuscript coffee chats where you can speak with her about your nonfiction project or writing idea. What an amazing opportunity. Please follow the link in the chat to see how to sign up for these exciting activities. You may already know Chelene Knight as the author of several award-winning books, including the memoir Dear Current Occupant and the historical novel Junie, both of which are winners of the Vancouver Book Award in 2018 and 2023, respectively. Her newest book came out earlier this month, a book of narrative nonfiction titled Let It Go, Free Yourself from Old Beliefs and Find a New Path to Joy. She also brings to the residency past experience as a poetry professor, a literary agent, a managing editor for Room magazine, and a festival director for the Growing Room Festival. In addition to all this experience in the literary and publishing industries, Chelene is the founder of the literary studio Breathing Space Creative, where she coordinates the Forever Writers Club, a membership for writers focused on creative sustainability, and the Thrive coaching program. Joining Chelene tonight are two other extraordinary writers that have been our nonfiction writers in residence over the past 2 years, Angela Sterritt and Eternity Martis. I'll briefly introduce them to you and then turn things over to the three of them. Last year's nonfiction writer in residence, Angela Sterritt, is an award-winning investigative journalist and best-selling author from the Wilpwegak of the Gittinmax community in the Gitxsan Nation on her father's side, and from Bell Island, Newfoundland on her maternal side. Angela has worked as a television, radio, and digital journalist for more than a decade, including hosting the CBC original podcast, Land Back. It's fabulous. If you haven't listened to it, I encourage you to do so. Angela's best-selling book, Unbroken, My Fight for Survival, Hope, and Justice for Indigenous Women and Girls, was published in 2023. And Eternity Martis was our 2022 Nonfiction Writer in Residence. Eternity is a multi-award-winning journalist, editor, and an assistant professor of journalism at Toronto Metropolitan University, whose writing on race and gender has appeared in over 30 publications. She was a senior editor at Extra magazine for many years and has influenced media style guides around Canada to capitalize Black and Indigenous, including Extra and the Toronto Star. Her award-winning best-selling memoir is called They Said This Would Be Fun: Race, Campus Life, and Growing Up. Please join me in welcoming Chelene, Angela, and Eternity.
Wonderful. Here we are. Awesome. How's my audio? Is my audio okay? Now that we had that little tech glitch, I wanted to make sure. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm so excited. When I was presented with this opportunity to be the nonfiction writer in residence, I was so excited. And what a gift it is to hold this space with both of you, Eternity and Angela, and to have an opportunity to discuss joy. Like, I've been buzzing all day just thinking about how nice this is going to be because and I prepared a little intro. As writers from racialized backgrounds, we often find ourselves tasked with the profound responsibility of crafting stories that reflect our personal traumas, and all while feeling the pressure to represent our communities. And while this work is undeniably crucial, it sometimes leaves us with limited space and energy to embrace joy in its various forms. To set aside dedicated moments solely for our own joy feels both revolutionary and nourishing. So over the past couple of years, I've dedicated my own writing to exploring this idea of joy and what it looks like for me. And my recent book, which still feels weird to say this thing is out in the world, was launched earlier this month, and it has immersed me in a journey of self-discovery. And I've looked back at old patterns, which have, led me to insights about who I am as a person, who I am becoming. And today I am genuinely delighted to be here with both of you, two writers whom I have long admired. So thank you both for being here, and let's get into some joy. So I have some questions for both of you, but I feel like the word joy has become homogenized to the point where it feels like it's too general for us to claim as is. So maybe we should start things off by each of us sharing our own definition of joy, and maybe why joy feels so necessary right now in this moment in the world. So maybe Angela, I'll start with you. What does joy look like and feel like for you?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I just want to congratulate you, Chelene, on the fellowship, but as well as releasing your latest baby into the world. It's such a big thing to do, to publish and release a book. And also, if people listening don't know, the Breathing Room is such an incredible project. My publisher introduced me to that, and I worked with Chelene as a coach, and it was such a joy to realize that this was a thing that I could actually think about what this journey meant to me in terms of like a healing process. But on the note of joy, so my next book is on men. And so I've been listening to a lot of podcasts on men, which has been actually really interesting. But one of the men, I can't remember his last name now, but the podcast is called Man Enough, and the guy's name is Jamie. And he runs the Wayfarer project. Anyway, so he gave this quote, which I thought was so fundamental to understanding what joy is. And it goes, in this world, we are influenced by two sentiments, joy and pain. Joy gives us wings. In times of joy, our strength is more vital, our intellect keener, and our understanding less clouded. We seem better able to cope with the world and to find our sphere of usefulness. But when sadness visits us, we become weak, and our intellect, our strength leaves us, our comprehension is dim, and our intellect veiled. The actualities of life seem to elude our grasp. The eyes of our spirit fail to discover the sacred mysteries, and we become even as dead beings. This was so critical for me to think about in the last few months, because as many people know, I quit my job at CBC. I was there for many, many years, not only enduring the daily grind of news, which is never good. News is always bad. Navigating incredibly traumatic stories, performing often on multiple platforms daily. And at the same time, not only, doing the invisible or maybe visible labor of educating your colleagues about Indigenous issues that are so well known in my community, like the 60 Scoop, residential school, foster care system, everything from a 101 perspective. Not only that, but having to fight for your place just to belong at a table, at a pitch meeting, in the newsroom, having to constantly fend off comments that are incredibly racist. The term microaggressions is important, but I think it's important just to recognize that, as Indigenous, Black, and people of color, we also experience just flat out racism in 2023 that is shocking on the system. And so when I read this poem, I just thought what I've been going through the last few months is really recognizing how rocked my nervous system was, to the point where I couldn't see through the clouds. I was just doing my job and fighting for my place and wearing this massive coat of armor and never really understanding what joy was. And I spoke to this group of Indigenous youth yesterday at NEC, and I'm just so used to speaking about how traumatic my experience in media was, because I think it's important. And then someone had asked me a question, well, what would your advice be for young people? Or like, what gives you hope? And I just got this big smile across my face. And I just said, seeing Indigenous people thrive right now on the covers of Vogue, doing like things for our community, not for outsiders' eyes, but for our families, for our people, whether it's fashion, whether it's sport, whether it's books, whatever it is, but doing things for us that we can love and enjoy and embrace and uplift. And just seeing, people my son's age, like 12 to 25, just living their best lives and feeling loved, by each other, and not even caring, like not, somebody said, well, what happens when the pink cloud is taken away? And I said, we don't care anymore. We don't like, we're not dependent on colonial society to uplift us. We don't need your structures or apparatuses. And I think that's been giving me so much joy, is just, I'm just being right now. It's taken a while to untangle all of that trauma, but just to be able to feel the magic of life without constantly having to fight for our basic human rights in institutions. Sadly, that is joy right now for me. But so much more that we'll talk about more tonight, I'm sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Angela, and for sharing that poem as well. I wrote down, find our sphere of influence, because I think that's really what it comes down to as well. Just figuring out where you fit and how can you do exactly what you just said. Like, how can you be that light, but in the right spaces? So, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And Eternity, what about you? What does joy feel and look like for you?
Well, after hearing what Angela had said about finding joy, it was pretty inspiring to me, because full transparency, I can't remember what joy felt like. I'm in that cycle of just being so busy and having so many things, and in the, you know, the constant state of having to defend, right, who I am. And now I'm an assistant professor at TMU, having to defend who my students are and teach them about the journalism industry. And it kind of breaks my heart that I have to say that to them, because they come in and they're already concerned about racism and misogynoir, sexism, etc. And so in preparation for this conversation, I was so excited to hear from both of you, because it just kind of, I just realized in that moment that, like, I don't really know what joy feels like anymore.
Mm.
And I really need to get back to that. And I just want to be transparent, because I think a lot of us are kind of in that spin cycle of kind of forgetting the little things. And I can't quite remember the last time, you know, I sipped my coffee in the morning and didn't take it to go and ran out the door, or had some time to stretch, or I don't know, just ate without kind of eating all my food and swallowing it and going off to do something. And so to me, I think what joy was, and the joy that I need to get back to for me right now, is going to be those little things. So waking up a little bit earlier, not to do work, but to stretch or to meditate even for 5 minutes. Eating unbothered at my desk or at the table. The table, I haven't eaten at the table in so long. Just those little things, because that's what energizes me. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in the, like, things are happening to me, things are happening and I can't stop them, or I'm busy, and in that you neglect yourself. And so that's kind of where I'm at, not trying to set these big goals of I need to take an hour walk, but let's start at 5 minutes, let's start at 10, and then 15, and being okay with it, being okay with the milestones being much smaller than I would like, just to get back on the track to joy.
Get back on the track to joy. It just sounds so good to me. But it's definitely the small things for sure. And I think that's where I'm at as well, where my joy is, and it's always changing, I think. But this idea of joy for me is just slowing down, like in every aspect of life. And that's been so difficult for me, even in thinking about the way that I speak and the way that I hold space. What if I take a longer breath? What if we sit here and nobody's saying anything? And I used to be so afraid of that. And now I'm like, well, I have 5 seconds here. Let me take that. Let me hold that. But it's definitely the small things for me. And I used to believe that I could only celebrate and I could only experience joy if it is this big, huge thing in front of me that is worthy of celebration. And I think that's the thing I'm trying to break down now. It's like, well, what if I can celebrate the fact that I stood up for myself in email and I didn't, change the time of my meeting as pressured to? What if celebration could be connected to upholding your boundaries? What if joy and celebration could be connected to helping a writer friend, or, all these little things that I think we gloss over and we skip over? Like, let's find ways to bring that back. So it's funny because my next question for both of you was connected to the micro stuff and not being bothered by whether or not the smaller things hold value. So maybe I'll skip over that question and jump into writing, because writing is work and there's so many phases within this act of writing. But I've been working a lot with writers who are saying that they're not enjoying the writing anymore. And this is like breaking my heart, that we have so many creatives out there who feel pressured to create and to write, but they're not enjoying it. And I'm thinking, well, what is this? What is this for? So is there a phase of writing that either of you enjoy, or that you bring joy to? Is there a part of writing that just kind of lights you up? I'd love to know. Maybe I'll start with you this time, Eternity.
I think the initial stages of just the what if, where can I go with this, are really exciting. But I think with my first book, I'm pretty type A, so I like a lot of organization. And so with my memoir, the outlining part got me really, really excited. And I would just like I would outline and outline, and I just loved it. And I found that fun for some strange reason. But now that I'm writing my second book, which is fiction. And now that it's actually a job, it's almost, it's so different. Like I feel like with your first book, it's your baby, you put everything into it, you know, you've been dreaming about that moment for so long. And with the second book, you're now an author and you're working towards something that's being published. And so for me right now, the step that I'm enjoying is writing something, not feeling really confident in it, stepping away for a day or two, going back and being like, did I write that? And just like the joy in, like the relief in that, like, stop doubting yourself. What you write is it's good. And so for me, the step of kind of going back to revise and realizing that it was much better than I thought it was because I let all of the doubt get in the way is the step
Yeah.
that's bringing me a lot of joy right now.
Ooh, that's fascinating too, because it almost sounds like it's the space away from the writing that kind of opened up the joy. Like, let me tuck this away,
Mhm.
go back to it. Oh, wait a minute, this is actually really great. Like, this is fantastic. Because it's
Yeah.
that inner critic is always there. And I've had people ask me too, and they've said, well, oh, you're working on like book 4 or 5, so that must go away. Like, you never feel like your writing is terrible anymore. I'm like, it keeps getting worse, really, when you think about it, because that inner critic is going to come, it's going to be loud and boisterous. But I think we have the tools as writers to quiet that voice and say, you go hang out over there. I'm enjoying, the bright light that's coming from my writing. So that's very, very interesting to me. Thank you for that, Eternity. What about you, Angela? Where's the joy in your writing process? Where does it hang
Writing
out?
about it's so funny listening to you, Eternity, and I'm sure Shailene, you remember me talking about this. Like, organization is like my, like, I will never get there, and that's okay. That is okay. So I love listening to you because I'm like, oh, people are good at this. Wow. I'm just, I'm not, and that's fine. But I love that you have that. I do love routine. That does bring me joy. Like, people are like, how do you go to the gym every day? And I'm just like, it's not like I have to do this regimented. It's just like every day I get up and have a coffee. Every day I go to the gym. Like, it's the routine. You know, I'm a creature of habit, and I love that. But um, I, I, I get a lot of joy writing about the land. And I get a lot of joy from being on the land. Like, when you're talking, Shailene, about you need something like spectacular, or you used to feel that joy. Like, for me, the land will always have that spectacular nature. Even like walking down a sidewalk in East Van and it's spring and the cherry blossoms look like cotton candy. And I guess, like, for me as an artist, I'm very attuned to my imagination. And so the land just, it feeds that imagination. And I love, what I wanted from my book more than anything was for someone to say you have beautiful writing. Like, if anyone said that to me, I would have been like, okay, I'm good. I don't need to win an award. I'm good. And just, I think the creative element of writing about the land and my spirituality, which ties deeply in with the land and supernatural beings, that brings me joy and comfort, because that is who I am. And the youth yesterday, I can't remember what they asked, but they were asking me something, and I was like, know your self-worth. Like, know, and not like know your self-worth, but like know your self-worth. Like, there's only one of you in the world, and you can be the weirdest person or the wackiest person or the biggest loser in the school, but it's still, there's only one of you. And no one can take that away. Colonization cannot take our essence away. They can't take our self-worth. They can't take our culture. They tried. And we have that as Indigenous people. And so for me, the writing and the connection to the land, for me, that's everything. And I loved what you said, Eternity, about just 1 minute or 2 minutes, just a walk, because that's how I think too. Like, you need to just get outside, for even on the porch, just for a heartbeat, just to feel, right? And to feel whatever you're feeling can be joyful. Getting through the day, getting through the emotion, is a beauty. It's a gift to be alive.
Mm, beautiful. And I love that idea of just the 1 or 2 minutes, like just give yourself that, because I think so often we are wrapped up in this idea that we don't have time. But it's like, if you can take 1 minute, like I think sometimes we think it has to be black or white, like we need a full 5 hours to go do this thing. No, just like the 1 minute outside. Like one thing that I like to do in the morning is like, I have to walk by my front door to get to my office, and the door is right there. 6 a.m. I just open the door. I just take a little peer out. Like, what does the air smell like? Literally 30 seconds. And then I'm like, I did that thing. Now I can go and do, whatever else is on my to-do list.
I
That
love
big
that.
Trello board full of stuff. You know me, Angela, with
Yeah.
the Trello board. I've got all these things there.
I know. I couldn't figure it
But
out. We tried.
yeah, yeah.
I
But it's,
love that
again,
though.
it's that
Just
one
opening the
moment, right?
door, smelling, like that's
Exactly.
kind of profound. Because I just wake up and I go on my phone, and it's like the worst thing you can possibly, like I know that, like everyone is like, do not go on your phone, because you go from theta or delta to like boom, like
Mm,
it's like so bad for you, but I can't figure out how to stop.
that's a
Especially
hard one.
the emails I'm
Oh,
trying to
those
stop
emails.
because you go from calm to anxious real quick. So
Yes.
I'm trying to move from, okay, you're on your phone, but stop looking at the emails. Go read, like, I don't know, some 90 Day Fiance news. And then from there, just stop touching the phone. But the emails really get me.
It's hard. It's hard. We
Yeah.
have to be kind to ourselves, though. And it's interesting. I think that's the one area where I feel like I've improved quite a bit. So I haven't had my phone in my room when I go to bed for like a year now. And it's just
Wow.
like, leave it
That's
on the coffee
amazing.
table, say good night, bye, like you're saying goodbye to someone you love, and go
I
to
love
bed. But my
that.
excuse in my head was that, oh, I need it for the alarm clock.
Mhm.
Got myself a real alarm clock where I can, look at it, so I don't have that excuse anymore. And it's like a little alarm clock that also has meditations and, nature sounds. So I fall asleep to that and I wake up to that. So when I go and reach for the phone, I actually have to do a bunch of stuff before I can even get to it. Like I have to go out my bedroom door, I have to get dressed, I have to go look for my phone. So, but I get it, that pressure to pick up that device that connects all of us, and then that immediate reaction to go to the email. Like it's really difficult. I've removed email from my phone. If anyone out there wants to
It's a
know,
great idea.
I can't log in from my phone and I don't know what the password is. So I have
That
to
would
go to
make
my
me so
computer.
anxious. Like all
It
this
takes
stuff, I'm like, that's
time.
beautiful, but I would be like in bed, like, I wonder what's going
How
on in the
many emails
world.
are there?
Like,
Yes. It
it's a
takes some time
process.
for sure. It's a
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
I remember when I was working as a literary agent and I was like, all right, got to get on my email, see what's happening. And there was a lot of that anxiety where I felt like, okay, I'm already behind. I'm 3 hours behind because I'm in, Pacific time zone. But letting that go took a while, and just saying, hey, the emails are going to be there. It's not the end of the world. Like, let's breathe. Taking care of myself becomes a revolutionary act, really, when I'm able to I guess combat that anxiety. But yeah, it's interesting. I think where we can find joy and where we can lean on it. So yeah, sometimes joy can be tethered to a part of the brain where we feel belonging and connected to other people. So now my question is, what does it look like for you when you feel like you really fit somewhere? Like you're in a space and you're like, this was built for me. What does that feel like? I'll start with you, Angela.
Hmm. It's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day because I started doing breath work. And it's not the modern breath work where you're like hyperventilating. It's like very, I guess, old school practice. That's what she says. And she's Cree, and she's singing and drumming, and it's just like she just knows me. And then I have like incredible moments in that. And it's like your nervous system it's so relaxed that I can't even explain it. It's like you go into another world because I don't experience that daily.
Mhm.
And I thought, this is so safe. This is such a safe space. And I don't actually feel that way very often unless I'm on the land. Like the land holds so much safety and belonging. Like I belong here. Like the animals come out um and I thought about it the other day because I was doing breath work on my own. And I thought about like how do I create safety for myself? Because I'm not used to that. I'm used to creating this like panicked, got to get it done. Oh my God, like you need to perform and produce. And is this safe for me? Have I created enough safety around me? Which was just a really interesting concept to think about, creating our own safety. But for me, it's on the land. It's amongst my own people. I did a conference a little while ago and it was all Indigenous people and it was so different than the book events, which are mostly, like I'd say 98% white people, mostly white women. Very kind, but it can be just different. With my own people, I felt it was about empowerment and it was about reciprocity and it was about love. And in the non-Indigenous spaces, mostly the white spaces, it felt like I was on guard and having to explain and perform my trauma almost, and or reject performing my trauma or having to state my boundaries over and over. And so I think safety for me is being amongst my own people or the land, or myself sometimes. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I feel like sometimes there's an opportunity for us to give ourselves that gift, like this idea of safety or emotional safety, just by figuring out what that looks like and feels like for us. Like one thing that I did with this book, this nonfiction book, was like, what a nerd. I've got like a little notebook here. And in on one of the pages, I just wrote down at the top, emotional safety. What is that going to look like for this particular book? What spaces do I want to be in and what conversations do I want to have? And I noticed like a pattern there too. I want to have conversations about love. I want to be able to be unscripted if it feels like it's a safe space to do so. And it was interesting just writing all of that and saying, well, I actually have quite a bit of control over that. And a lot of that is just, okay, I'm going to say no to the things that I can predict or the spaces that I don't think are going to allow me to show up in that way. Can I say no to this? But I think, again, if it's from this place of intention and it feels like it's grounded and rooted in something, and maybe for you, Angela, it's rooted in the land, maybe even, which would be really interesting to me, then the saying no to these things, it feels like it's okay. It's like it's something that we can do. So yeah, it's really interesting, this whole concept of safety and how that must be so different too for all of us. Such a different experience. And what about you, Eternity? What does it look and feel like when you feel like you really fit, or have you even experienced that?
Yeah, I think, Angela, what you said about sometimes safety is yourself. And I think for me, it is rooted in myself. I'm not only extremely introverted, not extroverted, introverted, and need a lot of recharging, but also kind of growing up, never really felt like I fit in anywhere. Part of that is because my mom is South Asian, my dad is Jamaican, didn't have like necessarily a group of friends that looked like me, didn't know where to sit in the cafeteria. Then I became super emo and I was like, there's no black emo girls around here. So it just got really complicated. And I don't know, I think when people put labels on you, especially when you're a teenager, they tend to feel like they stick. And so you realize that you're quirky, but then it's uncool to be quirky. And so I spent a lot of my teenage years and even my early 20s trying to find acceptance in being quirky and being me. And so to me, the safety, and I find joy and safety in feeling like I can be myself around people. And that's very hard for me because it took me a long time to kind of get used to people. Like I would say it would take me about 2+ years to start kind of being myself around people. And I know that I can be myself when I start singing, because I sing a lot of 80s songs. and I'm comfortable doing it. But there's some people that I meet and I'm comfortable being myself within, a month or two. And so to me, it's that I feel like the safety of learning to trust your intuition and build your intuition and trust your gut is really important to me. And that's how I find safety in connecting with other people. If I meet someone and instantly I clam up or I don't want to speak, I trust that there's a reason for it. Even if, I feel like I've always been right, I don't think I've ever been wrong about it. But instead of just that voice, from your parents or whatnot, you gotta talk to them, you gotta engage. If I feel like it's not working, then I don't force it. And similarly, in the kind of grounded emotionally of just learning how to say no to things. And I know we talk about this all the time, say no, say no. Um, but like you, Chelene, I want to show up in places where I want to have the conversations that I want to have that aren't forced on me. And one big part of that, of course, is, if you write a book or you're a journalist, you do interviews or you're on CBC or you're on the radio. And I think once your work is out there, you have very little control of how people view your work. And I found that to be a huge issue with my first book. Everybody wanted to talk about the book being about racism. And I said, well, my book isn't just about racism. It's about being a woman. It's about growing up. It's about belonging, like finding yourself, finding other people, and you lose control of that. And so I would not want to go do these interviews, but everyone around you is like, you should do it. It's good to do it. It's good to get the publicity. But at the end of it, I'd feel so drained and would retreat back to myself. And so for me, kind of it all starts with me and just trying to learn how to trust, who I want to be around, how I want to show up, if I want to engage or I don't want to engage, if I need to leave or I don't want to leave, I want to stay a little bit longer, if I want to do the interview or I don't want to do the interview. And so I'm trying to do that a lot more because I'm really, really tired of not feeling safe because I'm feeling like I have to do things because I should do them.
And I think that's exactly what will totally transform your energy and your joy, because that's something I've been trying to do a lot more recently as well, is just thinking about, because I'm also an introverted human and I thought there was something wrong with me, and I also thought there was something weird about taking so long to like let all these pieces of myself out. It's like my partner even said, oh wow, like it took me years like to know all these layers of you, and now I see that as a compliment, right? Like, yeah, you really have to be invested to get to know me. So it's like my mindset is shifting. It's so interesting. I feel so seen right now, Eternity, just with everything that you shared. But yeah, just kind of taking back control over how you show up. And sometimes we can say yes to the things that are a little scary or maybe feel a little bit different. If we say yes with the conditions and we say, okay, in order for me to feel safe here are the things that I'm going to need. And there's so much power, I think, that comes from knowing what those things are. And sometimes we have no idea. But again, slowing down, thinking about that, and then feeling safe enough to ask for those things sometimes. But yeah, you mentioned that you get kind of drained after if you do things that you don't really want to do, or if it's like an emotionally taxing thing, you get drained. What are your recharge activities? I'm so nosy, mostly because I need to add to my list.
I kind of just sit there, and I don't know if that's productive or not, but sometimes I just need to shut off my brain. And I have a partner who's really great at understanding. We're both introverts, that we can be together and we can recharge together in the same room without speaking. And I think that's also another sign of stability and security, when you can recharge with the person that you're with and you don't have to speak, you feel comfortable to do so. And so I just spent a lot of time just sitting there and being okay with it, because I think for a long time I was like, I'm home. Why am I sitting here? I feel guilty about sitting here. Go do something, go do this. And so now I'm like, nope, I'm just going to watch an episode of TV, and I might eat something, and then I might sit down for a little bit longer because I deserve to. And
Yes.
sometimes I I don't need a nap. I just need to sit there and just allowing myself to do nothing, not check my phone, not answer any calls. It's really been the way to recharge for me. I just did it actually when I got home today. I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here and not talk, and it works.
Yes, I love that. Such a great gift for yourself. I mean, I had a gap in my calendar, which feels rare. And I said, I'm just going to put on a 90s playlist and just relax and just kind of dance. You know, I could work on my manuscript. There's lots of stuff to do there, but I just really wanted that time. So it's so great that you know that about yourself, because I think it's valuable information. But let us talk a little bit about writing, because when I look at my own history of what starts a project for me, and it's kind of hard to look at and to think about, but I think most of my writing has come from a place of fear. I'm writing things because I'm afraid of them, but I'm also writing to answer questions. And I think something's shifted for me with this last book, where I said, I am starting the conversation for myself, with myself, about joy and about love. And that's what I want to speak about directly. In all my books, I've kind of hidden the love, tucked it under. I want people to look for it. I don't want to talk about it directly. And now I'm like, no, I'm out there and I'm talking about joy and love. But where does writing start for you? Is it often like something you feel? Is it because there's something really important that you need to address? Where does the writing begin? I'll start with you, Angela.
I mean, my first book, it came from, I think I don't know if I was like as bad as, or not bad, but like some other people, but I think I was a bit of an oversharer, but I was oversharing in a sort of cryptic, I was one of those cryptic oversharers. So it's like
Mm,
something's going on, but we're not really sure what. But it would be like I was going to Massey College at the time, and it was very, have either of you been to Massey College? It's like
no.
I think most universities started as Christian or Catholic institutions. So they have all these weird, well, not weird, but different things like these different rituals that they do.
Mm,
So I was processing that and writing about this on these huge Facebook posts. And that's how I sort of started writing my first book. And I thought it was going to be fiction at the time, and I was going to fictionalize my life, which I found much harder. There was so much more detail you needed, and I don't know, it felt more traumatic. Um, I find with the way that my brain works, even with my first book, um, and this maybe like I'm also introverted. I was also Gothic. I was gonna say
yeah.
Eternity. I was in Lethbridge, Alberta, which is, I don't know if you know anything about Alberta, or Lethbridge, but this Indigenous woman came up, young woman, and she was fully goth. And I was just like, try not to cry and scream and hug
Mm,
her. And I couldn't even be like, tell her why I like was so appreciative of her reading my book, but it was like made my year.
mm,
But anyways, so I I'm an introvert, and I kind of have like how do I explain it? I like love research. I love learning new things. I love being a journalist for the fact that you're learning a completely different view that you never thought of before. That just feeds again my imagination and my curiosity, and I get really excited about like my book now about men, like learning something that I'd never thought of, but is so amazing, and holy shit, like this is gonna blow minds,
mm,
it's blowing my, like I love that, like getting excited about a new idea that people are talking about. So that's kind of what feeds me. And um, and being very honest about who I am and mistakes I've made. That sounds weird to be excited about that, but because for me that's change. And we
mhm,
have a supernatural trickster in our culture called We Get, and he's constantly effing with shit. But in that process of breaking rules and breaking norms and kind of pissing people off, he's creating rivers and oceans and new beings. And so for me, I'm really drawn to that, new ideas and breaking rules and finding out and being extremely curious. That's sort of what's feeding my latest book, is sort of deep research into this topic, which is very under-researched in my opinion.
And now we're all like intrigued and we want to know more about this book. I'm just like, I want to read it like
Really sold it.
yesterday.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. Like, I think that's part of the joy of writing, is like that curiosity. You're leaning into something. Because I also like that feeling where I feel like I'm a spy. Like, I'm like, I know stuff that no one knows, and I'm like immersed in this world. But I'm like, people probably know this, but I feel like I'm the only one who knows it. And then breaking these rules. So you've got these traditional rules that we are told, here's how you write an essay, here's how you do this. And in my brain, I'm like, no, I need to snap that in half, or I need to do it backwards, or I need to do it this way. And in doing that, what message am I relaying to the reader? What secret message are they receiving because I've intentionally broken this rule or this template? And then what overarching conversation am I having because I've done that? Those are the things that really excite me about writing. And sometimes I forget that. So I feel like, oh, I had to write that down just in case I forget it again. So thank you for that, Angela. That's so cool.
Decolonizing writing too, right? Like I know this
Yes.
Nishka guy who did his entire PhD thesis with no punctuation. And his advisors lost their minds. They were like, absolutely not. And not take, he was like, sorry, but this is what's happening. I don't need your approval. I'm doing this. And same with my book. Everyone was like, I've never heard of a book that's investigative journalism and memoir. Like, you need to pick one. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to. And my agent was like, I think you can. I think that you can do this. And so I love that, like decolonizing the writing process. People always ask me, how do we know when this is decolonized? Well, it's when we're not speaking English, right? So that's the gauge for me. So when we're putting so much, like when people police me on Twitter, like, oh, you spelled that wrong, or burr, 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 I'm like, good.
Yes.
Because it's English. I don't care. Although my book is in English, but yeah, trying to break some of those rules for
That's so
better.
important. So important. And again, I think finding ways to kind of light that spark. And so many of us, especially when we get bogged down by deadlines and what's happening, in the world, I think we still have to remember we have this beautiful craft, we have this art that we can shape and mold and just be immersed in. But Eternity, what about you in terms of writing? Where does it often start for you, or where does the joy kind of come in for you too?
I think for me, there's some sort of burning question that kind of like wakes me up and I think about and it nags at me, like, I need to tell this story. And like, there's a lot of stories I want to tell. And like you, Angela, I love research. I will over research too. I love it. I'm like 1+1 = 3, because I have one new piece of information. So I love it too. I think for me it's just something that really really like won't leave me alone. And so for my first book, like had that experience at Western, and it was just something we were all talking about. After I published the book, I realized that so many generations, just 60s, 70s, 80s of students who went to Western and other schools in Canada had a very similar experience, almost verbatim to what I had described in the book. Um, and so for me, that's what I really held on to, because when I started shopping around the book back in 2018, I got a lot from editors, well, I don't understand it. We all go to university. We all, we're all messy. And I'm like, this is not what it's about. Like, this is about the conversations that I'm having with my friends or our grandparents had that have not been resolved, or our siblings or whoever. And so just sticking to that I know that there's something here to tell, and using my story not as the story, but as a jumping off point to discuss other things was really important to me. Because I also had begun my writing process with the first book of it just being pure fiction. Well, pure memoir. And the world kind of changed between, you know, but when I started writing it in 2010, then 2012, right? Then 2014. And then things just got weirder and weirder. Then we had like the far right and the alt right and Canadian values and all this stuff. And I was like, well, this feeling that was bugging me is now bugging me to make that a bigger part of this story of mine. And so it was really important to me to make sure that I had an agent, and my agent, Stephanie Sinclair, was incredible, and she believed in it just as much as I did. And she was like, "No, we're not taking this to anyone who doesn't understand it." And I'm like, "You're right, you're right." No matter how much you want your first book to be published. And I think with my second book, what's driving me right now and the joy I'm finding is that after the first book, I think I've completely burnt out talking about race and trauma and gender-based violence. And I don't think I've had to come to terms with kind of this own battle I'm having of, you have to do it, or you're not really doing the work if you don't talk about it. And right now I'm at a place where with my next book, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write something really fun. I'm writing about two friends backstabbing each other throughout their lives. It's got mean girl vibes. And I'm like, you know what? I just need to do it for me. This time, the first book it felt like it was for other people, but this one is for me. And if people don't like that, then, I have to do this for me. It has to be different. And I think right now, people know what I write about, and it is about race and gender. And this book does have, a Black character. It has racism, but I just want to do something fun and lighthearted because I feel like I should have that. I'm allowed to have it. And one of my dear friends, Manel Matani, I was telling her about my next book when I initially pitched it. And she's like, you know what? You deserve to write something that brings you joy. You deserve to write something that is fun and lighthearted. You deserve that. And it really got me thinking about that I could write stories that were fun and lighthearted because I'm not just confined to writing the hard stuff all the time, because it has such an impact on who we, like, our everyday, our functioning, if we get sick, so that's where I'm at with the writing process, just having fun with it and being okay with that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think so many people, possibly even in this room, need to hear that we deserve to write stories that feel good for us, and to be able to lean into that and not feel like we're compromising or losing out on something if we shift gears. I think it's so valuable to do that. Like, I'm a genre hopper. That's the phrase I gave myself. Started in poetry, jumped into weird hybrid memoir, from there into fiction, now narrative nonfiction. And now I decided I wanted to write a guided journal. And at first I'm like, who am I to write this thing? And then I'm like, well, that feels good for me. So let me lean into that. So maybe I want to write a children's book. Maybe a cookbook is in the works. Who knows? Who's going to say no to these things? We have to just say no to ourselves. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Did we lose Angela?
I think so.
Oh.
I don't see her.
Hopefully she pops back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might have been an internet connection thing. Oh, okay. Cool. Well, that's okay, because I have many questions, and hopefully Angela pops back in time for this one. So I want to talk a little bit about self-growth. When I look back, so the writer just starting out, completely unsure of every single thing connected to writing and publishing, I don't look back with that desire to change anything. But what I love to do is look for patterns connected to my growth. So I'm curious, how do you track how far you've come in terms of like writing and publishing?
Wow, that's a great question. I think I track growth in the actual words for me, in the writing itself. I think back to what I had said a bit earlier, sometimes you write things and you don't feel confident in them, or you have a story and you're not sure that, the imposter syndrome sets in, and you're like, did I write this right? Did I do this person justice or the story justice? And I think I track my growth in having those questions still, because I think being a good writer and a good journalist, you're always wondering that, but in not in being confident in my skills as a writer.
Mhm.
So for me, that's growth. Sometimes the answer feels quite intuitive to me, or the sentence feels very intuitive. Um, and I trust that now. And so that to me is the growth, is that yes, like as a writer, you're always struggling because it's never perfect for us. And there always will be a better sentence, or someone will say it in a way that, was more eloquent than you. But just trusting the work that I do now and the stories I want to tell and how I approach them, for me, is the growth. And feeling confident that I can do the job. Not that the job will be easy, because I think with a lot of our work, I was just telling my students this today. I'm teaching a graduate class on narrative journalism, and they're pitching stories. And I said, you have to commit to a story that you can see through. You don't have to love it all the time, because when you get your notes back on draft one, you're going to say, I hate this thing. But you have to like it still, and you have to commit and see it through. And so to me now, one of the ways that I see growth is that I don't choose stories anymore for the sake of choosing them. I choose them because I know that it will be hard, but I can do it, and I'm committed to seeing it through.
Such valuable tips and advice. I think, I don't think we are taught to track this growth, which is astounding to me. But one thing that I've been able to pinpoint, which is really exciting, is in terms of tracking my own growth, is how long I stay immersed in that negative mindset. Like I remember before, when the first time I ever got tracked changes comments from an editor on my piece, and I saw all those comments, and I was like, how am I supposed to fix this? Oh, I'm terrible. Like I had no idea what was going on. But when I look back to that, like 10 plus years ago versus now, where when I get and I think I had 759 comments on my last manuscript, and I'm like, all right, there's work to be done. It feels exciting to me. Like that negative voice is there, but it's only there for like 20 minutes. And then I'm like, cool, quiet, and then let me get to work. Whereas 10 years ago, I might have been like wallowing in this with this inner critic kind of, in my ear for days, weeks, months. So the growth for me is watching how that can shrink over time. And Angela, you're back. All right.
Sorry about
Awesome.
that.
Oh no, that's
Rookie
cool.
move. I didn't have my computer plugged in,
Aha.
but I'm back.
You're back. We were talking a little bit about how we track our own growth in terms of our writing, like where we might have been a year or 2 or 3 or 5 years ago versus now. How do we track how we've grown? And I don't know if you have anything that you use as a benchmark, or
I mean, I think you touched on something right there about your reactions. And that's really a way that I kind of track my own growth is, even being in an airport, you've missed 5 flights, you have to do a keynote the next day, it's now screwed, you missed this big meeting. And, I think 5 years ago, at the depths of my, nervous system being rocked in this wild reporting job, I would have just lost my mind on people, which is so unbecoming of anybody, and had a little spaz out internally and just been freaking out. And I was just like, well, this is, somebody called it spiritual. I don't know if I would see it as spiritual, but I was like, well, I've got 11 hours at the airport. That's an opportunity for me to do some things. Obviously, this happened for a reason. I ran into my little cousin who I'd never met before. That was so cool to see this young woman, so wise. And I looked at that as an opportunity, and like you were saying about the track changes, and now you're like, sweet, I got some things to do. Looking at it as there's some people out there who want to make me better, who want this book to be the best that it can possibly be, rather than, oh my God, like, wow, this is, you don't like me, and like internalizing all of those things. And it's pretty wild how for me, I got to that point through tapping. I don't know if people know about tapping, but I started doing tapping for miracles and money because I was very broke at the time, not even very long ago. And it changed my brain chemistry.
Yeah.
So someone would come at me like, sorry, you've been denied. And before I would have just lost it on them. And then I was like, oh, I'm sorry, you must have misunderstood me. I actually meant this. And they were like, oh, we'll have to relook at that. And I like received what I was looking for, which was a pretty
Wow.
significant thing. So it gets your brain to think in terms of like benefiting you, solutions for you, growth and evolution, instead of this is happening to me. It's this is happening for you. Like the universe is happening for you to grow, to evolve, as hard as it may be in those moments where it's horrific and this is not a good time. It's good to have those moments of reflection to say, wow, I've grown a lot and I've become a wiser, stronger, more gentle, more softer human being who has compassion for myself and everybody else around me, you know? So for me, that's huge. Yeah, I think bigger than like the writing process itself.
Massive. That's huge. Thank you for sharing that. Again, I think there's so many things we can do, you know, especially if we think outside the box. How do we call in joy, but how do we do so in a way that makes sense for us as individuals? And one thing I've been doing, and I used to feel so weird saying this, but it's like I've created a CV for my soul. So instead of tracking, you know, all of these different things that I've done professionally, I've got like a personal one. And when I'm starting to feel like, you know, the negative mindset's coming on, I'm like, let me look at my personal, my CV for the soul tracker. And it's weird, but I feel like it, again, and it reminds you, look at all these things that I've done to invest in myself as a person, not just the writerly stuff, not just the professional development, but me as Chelene. This is a list of things I'm tracking. And that really makes me feel good because it reminds me that, yes, I'm putting myself first. I'm creating the conditions to do all the things that I love. So I'm aware of the time, friends. We have about, I think, 6 minutes. So folks in the audience, if you have questions for us, you can definitely throw them in. I see we have one from Natalie. The question is, what art, writing, music, film, etc., do you find yourself gravitating towards when you need a little bit more joy in your life? Ooh, I don't know if either of you want to answer this.
I feel like, oh, go ahead, Eternity.
Oh,
You have a way better answer than me.
Mine is very quick. Sex in the City. It is my
Hey.
go-to for anytime I'm sad or I need some joy. Sex in the City. I also just rewatch a lot of films. It's my comfort. I don't know if anyone else does this, but
Yes.
sometimes you need to just rewatch it and not watch something new, and you need the security of knowing what's going to happen.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Because I was telling my partner, I was like, they were at the ceremony and me and my friend were trying to sleep. She was in her other hotel room and she's like, well, what did you do? And I was like, well, I was trying to sleep, so I just put on a murder show. And she was like, what? And I was like, well, you always know what's going to happen. Something bad that happens, somebody did it, and hopefully they get justice. Like you know the outcome, you know the formula. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. I've really tried to watch comedy or dramas and I can't. I've watched every single doc that exists on Netflix. Like there's no more left. And Crave as well. I've had to move to other platforms. My podcasts are all
I'm so glad I'm not the only one who does this. That's what I go to bed to. We can exchange. So I think I have some great podcasts for you. But yes, I have exhausted
me too.
like true crime Netflix documentaries too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put together a list. We can share it because I'm the same way too. I'm always looking for something that is a comfort and not necessarily because of the content, but because of what I know to be true about it. And it's just that familiar feeling, I think is often what I'm after. Like sometimes I'll have a TV show on in the background. I'm not really paying attention to it, but it's just there. It's like a friend holding space for me. So again, I think we need more opportunities to talk about things like this because it seems like these are the things that contribute to how we show up for ourselves, our writing, our families, our communities. What are the unique ways in which joy shows up for us? So yeah, that's where I'm at. How are you both feeling right now? How about we do a little check-in before we hand things over to Gwen? How are you feeling, Eternity?
I feel so great. It's been such a pleasure to be here with both of you. I'm gonna go do things. I feel so
Mm,
inspired by just listening to both of you. I'm gonna go take that walk and spend
yes.
some time drinking my coffee and kind of
Mhm.
re-engaging myself in the writing process. So thank you. Thank
Thank
you. This was
you.
so nourishing.
Wonderful. I'm happy. Nourishing for me as well. What about you, Angela? How you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to say one last thing about because
Yeah.
my answer was going to be like, I have too many things to do. I don't have anything that I do that brings me joy that I have to consume. But I will say what does bring me joy is like you were saying, Shailene, like you can say no to things. So, I have to do all these blurbs for these books, but
Mm,
they're incredible books. Like I get to read them and they bring me joy and finding joy in that. And, I do have to do all this research for my book, have to do, I want to do. It's like I get the privilege to review all these incredible podcasts, not just the true crime stuff, but finding joy in the things that you have to do, like reframing it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I do have I go to the gym every single night. It's like sometimes I'm just on my phone on a machine for like too long, but it's like I do it every night. I love it. I love the people there. They're all very like young. A lot of are
Mm,
yeah, it's just my safe space. And I get to experience dopamine and all this stuff. So, and
yeah.
they say when you're working out, you have the greatest manifesting powers that you have in any time in
Mm,
your day when you're working out. I don't know like what
mm,
Wow.
speed it has to be, maybe just walking. So I do a lot of manifesting when I'm on the treadmill running. Like I do a lot of processing. I do a lot
like
of zoning
it.
out too. I do a lot of math, which is weird, but so I'm gonna go do that now. But I'm
Wonderful.
so lucky that I got the chance to connect with both of you and so many similarities. And yeah, I'm so grateful that you invited both of us.
Mm,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you, Angela. Well, I'm thrilled that we had this opportunity to hold space and to learn so much about each other and to find these commonalities. Again, so powerful because who knows what space we might show up in together later on. Who knows? I'm excited. But thank you both so much for this. And I'll pass it to you, Gwen. I see you're here.
Yeah, thank you all. That was wonderful, and I hope you are able to see the love that's coming through in
Hmm.
the chat and outpouring of appreciation there. So thank you all for that wonderful conversation. It was so enriching to hear you all share about joy this evening. You talked about slowing down, celebrating victories, small and large, upholding
Mm,
boundaries, taking longer breaths, being in silence, the ways that you can recharge. And then considering together in just a brilliant conversation how your writing practice relates to this, what fitting in and safety mean. You talked about fear and love, growing as writers, much more than that. It was just such a treat to hear your thoughts this evening. So thank you all for your honesty and your openness, your generosity, and thank you all for your stint as writer in residence at the SFU Library. I'd like to offer my gratitude again to our event partner, SFU Public Square. It's a real pleasure to work with all of you. And I want to offer thanks as well to Chloe Riley from SFU Library, who planned this event this evening and who does all the behind the scenes work to run our amazing Writer in Residence program. And as a reminder, if you want more, Chelene will be hosting a series of engaging workshops as well as offering manuscript consultations over the next 4 months of her residency. So please do sign up if you're interested in those. And thank you all for joining us tonight. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye,
so much.
everyone.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Have a good
Bye.
evening. See you.